I was a family man through and through. 15 years of marriage to Amanda, 2 beautiful teenagers, and a vintage Ford truck I restored with my own hands. Our life seemed picture perfect from the outside. I worked hard as a construction foreman, came home to family dinners, weekend fishing trips with Jake, and helped Lisa with her science projects. Then came that Christmas gift. A simple DNA test kit from my brother that would shatter everything I believed about my life. Who would have thought a small plastic tube of saliva could rewrite 15 years of memories? Before I dive into my story, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like if you have ever had your world turned upside down in an instant. The first time I met Amanda, I knew she was special. We locked eyes across a crowded bar where my construction crew was celebrating finishing a major project. Her smile lit up the room, and within minutes of talking to her, I felt like I had known her my whole life. We started dating immediately, and 6 months later, when she told me she was pregnant, I did what I thought was the right thing. I proposed the next day with a small diamond ring I could barely afford on my foreman's salary. Lisa was born 7 months after our wedding. I remember holding that tiny bundle in the hospital, her little fingers wrapping around mine, and feeling a love I had never experienced before. 2 years later, Jake arrived, and our family felt complete. I worked overtime weekends and holidays to make sure they never went without. We were not rich by any means, but we had a comfortable 3-bedroom house in a good school district, and I made sure there were presents under the Christmas tree every year. As they grew, I built my life around them. I coached Jake's Little League team despite being exhausted after 12-hour shifts. I sat through Lisa's piano recitals, even though classical music puts me to sleep faster than a sleeping pill. I taught them both to fish at the lake where my father taught me. Every other Sunday, Jake would help me work on my vintage Ford in the garage, handing me tools and learning about engines. Lisa would sometimes join us, sitting on an old stool, sketching designs for how she thought we should paint it when finished. There were small things over the years that occasionally nagged at me. Neither child had my reddish hair or green eyes. They both had Amanda's darker features, which made sense, but sometimes at family gatherings my mother would look at them with a slight furrow in her brow. My brother Bill once drunkenly mentioned that Jake looked nothing like me, and more like someone else we knew. Amanda quickly changed the subject, and I dismissed it as Bill being his usual tactless self. Amanda and I had a good marriage, or so I thought. We had our arguments like any couple, usually about money or her spending habits. She had expensive taste that my construction salary could not always satisfy, but I worked extra shifts to give her the things she wanted. She handled all our finances because numbers were never my strong suit. I trusted her completely. Last Christmas, Bill gave everyone in the family DNA test kits as gifts. He had recently discovered he was part Scandinavian and was excited for everyone to explore their ancestry. I noticed Amanda tense up when I opened mine. "Those things are a waste of money," she said, trying to sound casual. "And who knows what they do with your DNA information? It is probably a scam." "It is just for fun, Amanda," I replied. I have always wondered if the family legend about having Native American ancestry is true. She tried several more times to discourage me, but I did not think much of it. Later that night, I found her staring at the unopened kit on our dresser, looking worried. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said quickly. "Just thinking about all the returns I have to do after the holidays." I registered the kit the next day and sent off my sample. Amanda never opened hers, claiming she lost it in the post-holiday cleanup. I forgot about it completely until an email arrived 6 weeks later while I was checking invoices in my truck during lunch break. "Your DNA results are ready," the subject line announced. I clicked through the ethnic breakdown with mild interest. Mostly British and Irish, some German, no Native American. Then I noticed another section labeled DNA Connections. There were distant cousins identified my brother Bill, but neither of my children appeared. Confused, I called customer service. "The system should automatically connect you with close relatives who have also taken the test," the representative explained. "Your children would show as approximately 50% DNA match." "Both my kids took the test," I said. "Could there be a mistake?" "It is extremely rare to have false negatives for close relatives," she replied carefully. "If they are showing no match at all, they would not be biological relatives." My hands shook as I ended the call. There had to be a mistake. Maybe the kids had not sent their samples in properly. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing through possibilities that each seemed more impossible than the last. Amanda was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I arrived. I showed her the results on my phone. "This has to be wrong," I said. Neither Lisa nor Jake show up as my relatives. Her face drained of color. She gripped the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. It is just one of those internet scams, she said, not meeting my eyes. I told you not to do it. The kids did send their samples in, right? I pressed. She was silent for too long. Amanda, I said, my voice breaking. Tell me what is going on. It was a long time ago, she finally whispered. You were working so many hours. We were practically newlyweds, and I barely saw you. My legs felt weak. I sank into a kitchen chair as she continued. It was not meant to happen. Thomas and I. It was just supposed to be one time. Thomas, my best friend from high school. The best man at our wedding. The guy who mysteriously moved across the country shortly after Jake was born. Thomas, I could barely say his name. Once would explain one child, Amanda. We have two. Her eyes filled with tears. It happened again when you were on that 3-month project in Arizona. I was alone with a toddler. He came to help with some repairs around the house. 15 years, I said, the magnitude of the deception crashing down on me. You have lied to me every single day for 15 years. I never meant to hurt you, she said, reaching for my hand. I pulled away as if her touch would burn me. Do they know? Do my kids know? I am not their father. Before she could answer, the front door opened. Lisa and Jake walked in, dropping their backpacks by the door as they always did, despite my constant reminders to hang them up. What is going on? Lisa asked, her eyes darting between us, sensing the tension. Your mother has something to tell you, I said, my voice hollow. Amanda shot me a panicked look, but I stared back coldly. No more secrets. Neil is not your biological father, she blurted out. The DNA test showed it. The kids stared at her in shock, then at me. What does that mean? Jake asked, his voice cracking. He was 14, caught between childhood and becoming a man. It means I lied to all of you, Amanda said. Your real father is Thomas Reeves. Your Uncle Tom, from California, Lisa asked incredulously. At 16, she understood the implications immediately. Her face hardened as she looked at me. So you are just nobody to us. Her words cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. I raised you, I said quietly. I was there for every birthday, every nightmare, every skinned knee. No wonder you were never a real dad to me. Jake said, his face flushing with anger. You always worked too much. You missed my championship game last year. I missed it because I was working overtime to pay for your baseball camp, I replied. But he had already turned his back on me. Lisa remained silent, refusing to look at me. The girl who once climbed into my lap for bedtime stories now acted as if I were a stranger who had invaded her home. That night I slept in my truck. I could not bear to be in the same room as Amanda, and the children had made their feelings clear. I scrolled through years of family photos on my phone, questioning every memory. Had any of it been real? The fishing trips, the science fair projects, the midnight fevers and emergency room visits. For 15 years I had been dad, and in one afternoon I became Neil, the man who lived in their house. The next week was unbearable. I moved into the spare bedroom, bringing only essential clothes and toiletries. The children avoided me completely. If I entered a room, they found reasons to leave. If I spoke, they answered in monosyllables, if at all. Amanda behaved as if we were merely going through a rough patch that would soon blow over. She continued to cook family meals, though I took mine to the garage or my truck. She asked about my day as if she had not destroyed 15 years of trust. We need to talk about the mortgage payment, she said one evening, following me to the garage where I was organizing my tools. I will continue to pay my share, I said flatly. And the kids' expenses. Lisa needs a new laptop for school, and Jake's travel team fees are due next week. I stared at her in disbelief. You still expect me to pay for everything? You are the only father they have ever known, she said, as if that justified 15 years of lies. Except I am not their father, am I? And you made sure they know that now. My brother Bill called to check on me after hearing rumors from mutual friends. He was furious with Amanda, but advised me to see a lawyer before making any decisions. I made an appointment for the following week. While looking for my passport to take to the lawyer, I found financial statements in Amanda's desk drawer. She had a separate account I knew nothing about with over $30,000 in it. Money that could have gone toward our mortgage, or the kids' college funds. Money I had worked overtime to provide while she squirreled it away in secret. That Friday I attempted to have a family meeting. I ordered pizza, their favorite, and asked everyone to stay at the table after eating. Jake immediately tried to leave. "I have plans with friends," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Please, just 15 minutes of your time," I pleaded. Lisa rolled her eyes but stayed seated. Amanda nodded encouragingly at Jake, who reluctantly sat back down. "I know this is difficult for everyone," I began, "but I want you both to know that nothing has changed for me. You are still my kids and I still love you. Except you are not our real father," Lisa said coldly. "Our real father lives in California. I have been talking to him on Instagram. He wants to meet me." Her words hit me like a physical blow. Thomas knew. He had been in contact with my daughter behind my back. "Since when?" I managed to ask. "Since Christmas," she replied. "When Uncle Bill gave us the DNA kits, Mom warned me what they might show. She gave me Thomas's contact information just in case." Amanda had the decency to look ashamed when I stared at her in shock. "You have been planning this reveal for months," I asked her. "I knew it would come out eventually," she said defensively. "I wanted Lisa to be prepared." What about me? Did I not deserve to be prepared? To not have my entire life pulled out from under me without warning? "At least Thomas has a real career," Jake interjected. "He is an investment banker. Drives a Porsche, not some beat-up old truck." "That beat-up old truck paid for your braces," I snapped, immediately regretting my tone. I had never spoken harshly to the kids before, no matter how much teenage attitude they gave me. "Maybe it would be better if you moved out for a while," Amanda suggested softly. "Give everyone some space to process." "You want me to leave my own home? The home I have paid for all these years?" "Technically, we both pay for it," Amanda countered. "My name is on the mortgage, too." "With money I earned," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Just leave already," Jake shouted. "You are not our real dad anyway." I looked at each of their faces, Amanda calculating behind her tears, Lisa already mentally replacing me with the fantasy of her real father, Jake angry and confused, looking for someone to blame for his upheaval. In that moment I realized they saw me as nothing more than a provider, an ATM with legs that was no longer necessary now that Thomas was in the picture. The next day I met with a lawyer who specialized in family law. The news was not good. "Even without biological connection, you have established yourself as their father," she explained. "The court will consider you the legal father for all intents and purposes. So I am legally obligated to support children who are not mine and want nothing to do with me. I am afraid so. You can petition for a paternity fraud case, but those rarely succeed when the husband willingly acted as the father for many years." "What about the house?" "The savings community property. You will likely have to split everything 50-50 in a divorce." I sat in my truck afterward, overwhelmed by the injustice of it all. 15 years I had given everything to a family that was built on lies. 15 years of 60-hour weeks, missed vacations, cheap lunches, and worn-out work boots, so they could have what they needed. For what? To be discarded the moment they had a better option. I called Paul, my oldest friend, from before I even met Amanda. He listened without judgment as I poured out the whole story. "Come stay with me," he offered immediately. "My cabin has plenty of room and the construction business is booming here. You could start fresh." "I cannot just leave," I said, although the idea was temptingly simple. "Why not? Sounds like they have already left you emotionally. You are just occupying the same space now." His words stayed with me as I drove home, taking the long route through town to delay my arrival. What was I fighting to save? A marriage that had been a lie from the beginning. Children who now rejected the very idea of me as their father. A home that felt like a prison of painful memories. When I finally pulled into the driveway, there was an unfamiliar car parked in my spot. A sleek black Porsche with California plates. My hands shook as I turned off the ignition. I knew before I even walked in who would be sitting at my kitchen table. The scene that greeted me was like a knife to my heart. Thomas Reeves, my former best friend, sat at the head of my table in my chair. Jake wore a University of Southern California sweatshirt that was clearly new. Lisa was showing Thomas pictures on her phone, leaning comfortably against the man who had betrayed me twice. Amanda looked up when I entered, having the grace to appear slightly uncomfortable. "Neil, you remember Thomas." "Remember him. The guy who stood beside me at my wedding, who held my bachelor party, who apparently fathered my children, and then disappeared from our lives until now." The rage that filled me was unlike anything I had ever experienced yet. Somehow, looking at the four of them sitting there like a perfect little family, something inside me went very quiet and still. Neil Thomas stood and extended his hand as if we were business acquaintances. I know this is awkward, but I thought it was time we talked man to man. I ignored his outstretched hand. In my house at my table with my family, Dad, Lisa said, then caught herself. I mean, Thomas thinks we should all try to be mature about this. He says we can work out an arrangement where you can still be in our lives. An arrangement, I repeated flatly. I know you care about the kids, Thomas said smoothly. And they will always think of you fondly as the man who raised them. Fondly, I echoed, feeling like I had stepped into some bizarre alternate reality. Jake fingered the USC logo on his new sweatshirt. Thomas says I could go there if my grades improve. He knows people on the admissions board. Amanda smiled encouragingly. See, we can all be civil about this. Thomas is moving back to the area. He has already found a house in Lakewood Estates, the exclusive gated community, where homes started at 7 figures. The kind of neighborhood Amanda had always wanted to live in, but that my salary could never provide. I am taking Lisa shopping for her spring formal this weekend, Thomas added, as if that should please me somehow. And Jake and I are going to a Lakers game. Box seats. In that moment, with perfect clarity, I understood that I had been replaced, upgraded for a newer, more expensive model. 15 years of love and sacrifice dismissed, because Thomas could provide what I never could. Material things, status, prestige. Without a word, I turned and walked upstairs to our bedroom. I pulled my duffel bag from the closet and began methodically packing my clothes. Just the essentials. My work clothes. A few personal items. The watch my father gave me. The small wooden box containing my own father's ashes. Photos of my parents. Nothing that Amanda and I had accumulated together. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Amanda appeared in the doorway. "What are you doing?" she asked, though it was perfectly obvious. "What does it look like? You cannot just leave," she said, a note of panic in her voice. "What about the mortgage? The bills? The kids' expenses? Of course. The money." That was her only concern. "I am sure Thomas can handle it," I replied calmly. "He has box seats to the Lakers after all. Neil, be reasonable. The kids need stability right now." I laughed, a hollow sound with no humor in it. Stability. You destroy our family with 15 years of lies. Invite your lover into our home. Encourage our kids to reject me. And now you want to talk about stability. I zipped the duffel bag closed with finality. "The lawyer says you are still legally responsible," she reminded me, her voice hardening. "You cannot just walk away from your obligations." I reached into my pocket and placed my wedding ring on the dresser. Next to it, I laid my house keys. "Watch me." I walked downstairs with my bag over my shoulder. Thomas, Lisa, and Jake were still at the table now, looking through a brochure for what appeared to be a Caribbean cruise. Neil Thomas began his tone. Conciliatory. "I hope we can be friends again someday." I stared at him, this man who had everything I thought I had, everything I had worked for. "I am leaving," I said simply. "Goodbye." For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across Lisa's face. Leaving. For how long? For good? Jake stood up, suddenly looking younger than his 14 years. "But where are you going? Away from here? You cannot just leave," he protested, the confidence from earlier replaced by confusion. "You are." He stopped, unable to call me his father now. "I am what, Jake? Not your real dad, right? Just the guy who paid for everything? Well, you have a real dad now. One with a Porsche and box seats." I walked out to my truck and tossed my bag in the passenger seat. Through the window, I could see them gathered at the front door watching me. Amanda looked afraid, probably calculating how this would affect her financially. Thomas appeared uncomfortable, perhaps, realizing that taking over a family was more complicated than he had imagined. The kids just looked shocked, as if they had never considered I might actually leave. I started the engine of my old Ford, the truck that Jake had mocked but that had carried me faithfully for over a decade. As I backed out of the driveway, I caught a glimpse of Lisa taking a step forward, her hand half raised as if to wave or signal me to stop. I did not slow down. For the first time in 15 years, I chose myself. I drove east with no real destination in mind beyond Paul's offer of his cabin. As the miles passed, the crushing weight on my chest began to ease slightly. I was not running away, I told myself. I was running toward something new, a life without lies, without betrayal. As I crested the mountain pass that would take me out of the state, I pulled over at a scenic viewpoint. The sun was setting over the town where my life had just imploded. In the fading light, it looked peaceful, ordinary. No one looking at it would guess the pain and deception hidden behind those twinkling lights. I took out my phone and saw 17 missed calls. Amanda, Lisa, even one from Jake. I turned the phone off and put it in the glove compartment. Whatever they wanted to say could wait. I had given them 15 years. I could take one night for myself. 6 months went by quickly in the small Montana town where Paul had helped me find work. The construction business was indeed booming, and my experience as a foreman put me in high demand. I rented a small cabin by a lake, not unlike the one where I had taught Lisa and Jake to fish. On weekends, I worked on building a proper deck for it, enjoying the simple pleasure of creating something with my hands. I maintained minimal contact with my old life. Monthly payments to the joint account. Amanda and I shared enough to cover what the lawyer advised was my legal obligation, but nothing more. Occasional text messages with the kids, brief and superficial. How are you? Fine. How is school? Fine. The connection that had once been as natural as breathing was now forced and awkward. Amanda called regularly about money. The house needed a new roof. Lisa wanted a car for her 17th birthday. Jake needed tutoring for his SATs. Each time I gently reminded her that Thomas was in their lives now, and surely his investment banker salary could cover these expenses. Through mutual friends, I heard bits and pieces about their lives. Thomas had indeed moved to town, but not to the exclusive Lakewood Estates as promised. He had an apartment downtown. He took the kids on expensive outings and bought them lavish gifts, but the day-to-day parenting still fell to Amanda. The cruise they had been looking at when I left never materialized. I was rebuilding my life piece by piece. I made new friends at work and at the local bar where I occasionally stopped for a beer. I rediscovered my passion for woodworking, something I had put aside when the kids were born and free time became a luxury. I started crafting furniture in the small workshop behind my cabin, selling pieces at the local farmers market. Women showed interest, but I was not ready. The wound was still too fresh. On a crisp fall day, I was sanding a coffee table on my deck when a car I did not recognize pulled up to my cabin. I watched curiously as the driver sat there for several minutes, seemingly gathering courage. Then the door opened and Jake stepped out. My heart lodged in my throat. He was taller than when I had last seen him, more filled out. 6 months is a long time in the life of a teenager. He stood awkwardly by the car, looking at me uncertainly. "Jake," I said, setting down my sander. "What are you doing here?" "Paul gave me your address," he admitted. "I've been trying to call." I had a new phone number, one that only Paul and my employer had. "How is school?" I asked, falling back on our safe text message exchanges. He shrugged, scuffing the ground with his shoe. "It is okay. I made varsity baseball." "Congratulations. That is great." An uncomfortable silence fell between us. I did not invite him up to the deck, and he did not ask. "Thomas left." He finally blurted out, "2 months ago." I absorbed this information without visible reaction, though something shifted inside me. The novelty wore off. Jake continued bitterly. He said he was not cut out for teenage drama and family life. He moved back to California. I am sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it, not for Thomas, but for the kids who had been abandoned again. "Lisa is having a hard time," he said. "Her grades are slipping. She does not talk much anymore." Another pang in my chest. Lisa, my bright, ambitious girl who had always excelled at everything she attempted. And your mom, working 2 jobs now. The bank sent letters about the mortgage. I nodded, unsurprised. Amanda had never been good with money. She and Thomas dated for a while after you left. It did not last long. They fought all the time. I remained silent, unwilling to say what I was thinking. That 15 years of deception did not make for a solid foundation. That relationships built on betrayal rarely survived. Jake took a hesitant step forward. "We found the journals. The ones you kept when we were little." I froze. I had forgotten about those. Small notebooks where I had recorded their first words, first steps, funny things they said, milestones big and small. I had written in them faithfully for years, a record of my love for 2 children I had believed were mine. Lisa reads them every night, he continued. And we found all the cards we made. You the ones that said world's best dad. You kept every single one. Of course I did, I said softly. We did not know about all the extra shifts you worked to pay for our stuff. Mom told us after you left. About how you took a second job when Lisa needed braces. How you sold your baseball card collection to pay for my first real baseball glove. I looked away, uncomfortable with his gratitude now, when my sacrifices had meant so little before. I graduate in May, he said, changing the subject. I was wondering if you would come. The request caught me off guard. Your mother would be okay with that. It was her idea, actually. He looked down at his shoes again. She says she made a terrible mistake, that she did not appreciate what she had until it was gone. Too little too late, I thought, but did not say. Lisa wants to see you too, he added. She is too scared to come herself. She thinks you hate her for the things she said. I could never hate either of you, I said truthfully. I raised you. That does not just go away. That is what makes you our real dad, Jake said, his voice breaking slightly. Not DNA. The words I had longed to hear 6 months ago now felt bittersweet. It had taken losing me for them to value what I had provided all those years. Not just financially, but emotionally. The consistent presence. The unconditional love. I will think about the graduation, I promised, not ready to commit. Jake nodded, accepting that it was the most I could offer right now. He turned to go, then stopped. The truck looks good, he said, nodding toward my Ford parked nearby. I had repainted it, fixed the dents, given it the restoration it deserved. Better than Thomas's Porsche. I smiled despite myself. It runs, which is what matters. He returned the smile hesitantly, a fragile bridge forming across the chasm between us. When May arrived, I found myself driving back across the state line, my truck loaded with graduation gifts for Jake. A handcrafted desk for his college dorm room. A new baseball glove better than the one I had sold my collection to buy years ago. Small things that represented the future rather than our painful past. I had maintained more regular contact with both kids in the months since Jake's visit. Weekly phone calls. Video chats where Lisa gradually stopped looking so guilty when she saw my face. They were trying, and so was I. The wounds were healing slowly but surely. As I pulled into town, memories assaulted me at every corner. The park where I had pushed them on the swings. The ice cream shop where we celebrated every report card. The baseball field where I had coached Jake's Little League team. A life I had thought was mine, built on a foundation of sand. The graduation ceremony was held in the high school football stadium. I sat far from Amanda, acknowledging her with a distant nod when our eyes met. She looked older, more worn down. Working 2 jobs would do that. I felt no satisfaction in her difficulties, just a dull ache for what might have been in another life, one built on honesty. When Jake crossed the stage to receive his diploma, I stood and cheered loudly. His eyes found mine in the crowd, and his face lit up with a smile that transported me back to his childhood. For a moment, the pain receded, replaced by simple pride in the young man he was becoming. Afterward, as families gathered to take photos and offer congratulations, I hung back uncertain of my place in this tableau. Then I felt a hand slip into mine and looked down to see Lisa beside me. I was not sure you would come, she said softly. I would not have missed it. She squeezed my hand, her eyes filling with tears. I am so sorry, Dad. Dad. The word I thought I would never hear from her again. I know, sweetheart. Can we try again? She asked hesitantly. Not like before, I know that is impossible. But something new, I miss you so much. Before I could answer, Jake bounded up to us, Kappa Skew diploma clutched proudly in his hand. You came. I promised I would think about it. I replied with a small smile. And I am glad you did, Amanda said, approaching cautiously. Hello, Neil. Amanda. An awkward silence fell between us. 15 years of history too complex to navigate in a crowded stadium. Thank you for the desk, Jake said, breaking the tension. Paul helped me unload it yesterday. It is amazing. You made that, Amanda asked, surprise evident in her voice. I nodded. I have a workshop now. I make furniture. He sells pieces at the farmer's market, Jake added proudly. He has a waiting list of customers. Amanda looked at me with new eyes, seeing the man I had become in my absence rather than the one she had taken for granted for so many years. "Would you join us for dinner?" she asked. "To celebrate Jake's graduation? 6 months ago, I would have refused outright. Now, looking at the hopeful faces of the kids, I found myself nodding. For a little while. As we walked toward the parking lot, Lisa still holding my hand and Jake walking close beside me, I realized that fatherhood was never really about biology. It was about showing up day after day. It was about loving consistently, even when it was difficult. It was about sacrifice without expectation of return. Thomas might share their DNA, but he had never understood what it truly meant to be a father. In leaving when it became difficult, he had taught them a painful but valuable lesson about the difference between being a biological father and being a dad. I had a small apartment now back in town, but far enough from our old house to give me the space I needed. I saw the kids regularly on my terms. We were rebuilding our relationship not as it was before, but as something new, something honest. Amanda and I were civil co-parents only. The divorce was finalized fair, but not excessively generous. I had learned to protect myself while still fulfilling my obligations. The love I had felt for her was gone, replaced by a complicated mix of resentment, pity, and occasionally on good days indifference. There was someone new in my life, a potter who sold her work at the same farmer's market where I sold my furniture. She knew my story, understood my caution, and moved at the pace I needed. With her, I was learning to trust again, slowly and carefully. The kids knew about her and seemed happy for me. Another new chapter in our evolving family story. True fatherhood, I had discovered, transcended biology. It was built day by day, moment by moment, through 1,000 small acts of love and sacrifice. DNA might determine eye color or hair texture, but it did not determine who would sit up with a sick child at 3 in the morning, who would cheer the loudest at baseball games, who would be there through heartbreaks and triumphs. The hardest and best decision I ever made was driving away in my truck that day. Not because it punished those who had hurt me, but because it forced all of us to confront the truth about what family really means. Sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what truly matters. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice between your own dignity and people you love? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stayed, or would you have driven away too? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in our most challenging moments. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the family we rebuild is stronger than the one we lose.